I'll give you whatever you want. Write down on a piece of paper, and in order of importance to you, all the things you desire, and without fear of asking too much, for the strength that I am going to make known to you knows no limitation. Read your list when you wake up and before you go to sleep. Think often about your desires. Enjoy imagining them, and whenever you remember them say, "Thank you, Father, that you have already given the order that they be conferred on me." Don't tell anyone what you're doing. This is very important because if you talk about it with someone, all the force dissipates and you will not see your wishes come true. That's all. Now, for your own satisfaction, be splendid with yourself. Don't say on your list that you want a little house, even if it's small. Order it in the size that suits you and pleases you completely. If it's money, mention the amount. If it's work, indicate what class, the salary you aspire to, the conditions and the most convenient location for you. In your first list, put simple things so that you get used to seeing wonders fall and happen, because since you have never done this, you will not believe that it is possible, and I warn you that this doubt can cost you not to see what you have asked for. It's natural for you to have doubts and mistrust because the idea is very new to you. But when you feel skepticism, pessimism, etc., pull out your list, reread it, and say thank you again. Giving thanks for what has not yet been seen is the most positive way to manifest faith. It was recommended by Jesus Christ on several occasions, as you may recall, notably before he fed 5,000 people with 5 fish and 5 loaves, when he looked up to heaven and gave thanks at the moment of breaking the first loaf of bread. Oh, you'll be surprised that every time you read your list, you're going to have to cross off a few points first because they've already been made. Then you'll have to do it again, putting other points in the most important places. Don't worry about this. It's natural, it happens to everyone. What happens is that your higher self is telling you that many of these desires are already within your reach, while there are others that are not so much. Oh, don't swear to the way they're going to be given to you because it's counterproductive. The great spiritual force is beyond your human comprehension. Accept what she gives you gratefully, do not interrupt or inhibit her, and above all, do not think or say or exclaim when you see your wishes fulfilled, "How is it going to be? This doesn't seem possible. It looks like all this was going to happen anyway." Nothing at all. What happens is that the great spiritual force, whose real name, in parentheses, is the law of precipitation, is completely impersonal and places its gifts in the most harmonious, most natural places, tapping into the channels already established in your own life. She's not interested in exhibitionism or surprise. It only fulfills its mission of giving it what you ask for, where it suits you best. Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, touch and it will be opened to you. Matthew 7 verses 7 to 11. The Master Key. The reason there are several of Dr. Emmett Fox's lectures in this booklet is because it has been compiled to help, to get us out of trouble as quickly as possible, and Dr. Fox, my teacher, has been, and continues to be, though his subject is no longer with us, a specialist in the art of getting out of trouble. I made the previous article for you to achieve everything you want in a minimum of time. This is done to alleviate any condition that is becoming unbearable. Says Dr. Fox. I have reduced this trial as much as possible. I would have liked to reduce it to a few lines. It is not an instructive treatise but a formula to get you out of calamities. Studying is fine in its own place and time, but it won't straighten out your difficulties. It's just the work of raising and transforming your awareness of things that fixes a problem on the outside. Read the Master Key often. Do as you are told, and if you have persistence you will find yourself mastering every difficulty. Scientific prayer will get you out of any existing difficulties. It is the master key to harmony and happiness. To all those who do not know the greatest power in the universe, I recommend that you try what I present here so that you will obtain the results that we claim. God is omnipotent and man is his image and likeness, with dominion over all things. This is what the spiritual doctrine says and it is to be taken seriously. It is not the prerogative of the saint or the mystic. It's for all humans. Whoever you are, wherever you are, the master key to harmony is in your hands now. This means that in scientific prayer it is God who does and not you. Your only job is to get out of the way so that God can work through you, who are just a channel. That's why your flaws, your limitations don't interfere with the results. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to. God is God, the only one. You are his child, and that is enough for him. Now for the way to work. When you find yourself in a difficulty, try not to think about the problem anymore and think about God. It replaces the problem with the thought of God. It doesn't matter if it's something very big or very small. It doesn't matter what it is, what does matter is that you stop thinking about it. Think of God. It doesn't matter what you think of God. What you know about Him, who is omnipotent, omnipresent, who is love, wisdom, truth, intelligence. That He is almighty, infinite, it doesn't matter that you know it very well, think about it again. And think about it every time you are haunted by the thought of the problem again. Don't get tense. Don't try to guess what's going to happen or how God is going to fix it. Leave it to Him. Put it in their hands, as we say in metaphysics, and forget it. You have entrusted your problem to the greatest, wisest, most skillful specialist who will solve it in perfect harmony for everyone, to your complete satisfaction, but do not get in His way. Don't interfere with your human personality. Don't mess up, said Penny. The right way to pray. Spiritual treatment is the effectiveness of raising the mind, or consciousness, above the level of the problem. If you succeed in raising your thought high enough, the problem will solve itself. Actually, that's your only problem, that of elevating your thinking. The more difficult the problem, which means that the deeper that concept is buried in your subconscious, the higher your consciousness will have to go. That which is called a minor nuisance will yield to a small elevation. That which represents a serious problem will need a greater elevation, and if it is a great danger or a desperate situation, it will require more spiritual work to overcome it, but that's the only difference. But don't try to fix your problems or those of others by trying to compose thoughts. That's not the case. Raise your consciousness and God's action will do it all. This means that you have to remember the truth of being, the truth of God, the truth of the spiritual plane, that is, how are the conditions in the spirit, or what is the higher self like? Well, it's perfect now, right now. It has no flaws. There is no death, no sickness, no poverty, no strife, no enmity, no war, no ugly, no evil. And by seeing the opposite condition to what you are looking at in the material, it becomes the truth. Jesus healed the sick, reformed sinners, controlled storms, and raised the dead because He could raise their consciousness as high as necessary to do so. To raise your consciousness, you have to take your attention away from the material picture for the time being, and then gently concentrate on the picture that presents spiritual truth. You can do this by taking your mind off the problem and reading one of your metaphysical books, or by saying some statements, not like a parrot but by meditating on them, or by conversing with one of your teachers or your advanced classmates. I know people who have achieved elevation of consciousness by flipping through and rereading parts of the Bible, because the law of attraction will open the Bible to you where it pertains to your problem. A man saved himself in the sinking of a great ocean liner by repeating, "God is love," until he could realize something of what this great statement means. You can also use all of these systems at once, if you want. Just don't let yourself get tense. It doesn't matter how you elevate yourself, as long as you elevate your thinking beyond the plane of problems. God in business. Business, whether it's buying and selling, contracts or whatever, is mediation between people. They have to be satisfactory for both of you. They are adjustments between individuals. Whether you're looking for a job or looking for a person with certain appropriate qualifications, it equates, Dr. Fox says, to seeking and finding God on both sides of the problem, that is, in the person who is looking for and in the person who is offering. God Himself is handling the matter. God cannot be divided in order to antagonize Himself, so there has to be a point of harmony where the two people meet. God Himself is seeking fulfillment in each of His two children. Don't try to impose your will. It affirms that it is God's will that is being fulfilled on both sides. Expose your part in all honesty, in all simplicity. Forget the habit of waiting for the other to be trying to play a trick on you in order to bring the ember to his candle. Remember that God is within him as well, and you will see Him proceed with complete justice. Don't try to interest Him with exaggerations either. Don't try to convince Him in spite of Him. Remember that if you don't get this sale or this job, or this employee, it just means there's a better one for you. Don't be in a hurry, don't be in a hurry, God is never in a hurry. He works effortlessly. On the spiritual plane everything comes, softly, softly. Don't forget the magic formula. According to the will of God, in the name of Jesus Christ, in harmony for all the world under grace and in a perfect way, I wish. Thank you, Father, that you have already heard me. The mighty verse. The formula for praying correctly. I am divine spirit. In God I live, I move, and I have my being. I am part of God's expression and express perfect harmony. I individualize omniscience. I have direct knowledge of the truth. I have perfect intuition. I have spiritual perception. I know. God is my wisdom, so I cannot err. God is my intelligence, I can't help but think rightly. There is no waste of time as God is the only doer. God works through me, so that I am always acting rightly, and there is no danger of me praying wrongly. I think the right thing to do, in the right way at the right time. My work is always well done because it is God's work. The Holy Spirit is always inspiring me. My thoughts are fresh, new, clear, and powerful as they fit omnipotence. My prayers are manufactures of the Holy Spirit, mighty as the eagle, and gentle as the dove. They come out in the name of God Himself and cannot come back empty to me. They will do what pleases me, and they will prosper in what they are directed to. I thank God for this. This last thought is from Isaiah 55 verse 11. The following 4 sentences are recommended by Dr. Emmett Fox. What is love? God is love, and he who dwells in love dwells in God, and God in him. 1 John 4:16. Love is the most important thing of all. It is the golden gate to paradise. Ask for understanding of love and meditate on it daily. Banish fear, it is the fulfillment of the whole law, it covers a multitude of sins and is absolutely invincible. There is no difficulty that cannot be overcome with enough love. There is no disease that cannot be cured with enough love. There is no door that does not open enough love, and no abyss that cannot be bridged by enough love. There is no wall that enough love does not break down, no sin that enough love does not redeem. It doesn't matter how buried the error is, neither how desperate the outlook is, nor how great the error, nor how tangled the entanglement. If you can love enough, you will be the most powerful and happiest being on earth. The presence. Very powerful affirmative meditation to achieve the elevation of consciousness. God is the only presence and the only power. God is fully present here with me now. God is the only real presence. Everything else is mere shadow. God is the perfect good. God is the cause only of perfect good. God never sends sickness, accident, temptation, or death, nor does it authorize these things. God, the good, can cause nothing but good. The same source cannot produce both sweet and bitter waters. I am divine spirit. I am a child of God. In God I move, I live, and I have my being, so I'm not afraid. I am surrounded by the peace of God and all is well. I am not afraid of nations, I am not afraid of circumstances, I'm not afraid of myself, for God is with me. The peace of God fills my soul and I cannot be touched even by fear. I am not afraid of the past, I am not afraid of the present, I am not afraid of the future because God is with me. The Eternal Father is my dwelling place, and lower down are the eternal arms. Nothing can ever touch me but the direct action of God Himself, and God is love. God is life. I understand this and express it. God is the truth. I understand this and express it. God is divine love. I understand this and express it. I send thoughts of love, peace, and health throughout the universe, to all the trees, the plants, and everything that grows, all the animals, the birds, the fish, every man, woman, and child on earth without distinction. If someone has harmed me or done me any wrong, I voluntarily and completely forgive them now, and that whole thing is over forever. I let go and let it go. I'm free and He's free. If there is any resentment left in me, I entrust it to my inner Christ and I am set free. God is infinite wisdom, and that wisdom is mine. That wisdom guides and directs me, so that I cannot make mistakes. Christ in me is the lamp to my feet. God is the infinite life, and that life is my providence, my supply. I can't lack anything, I can't lack anything. God created me and sustains me. Divine love has foreseen everything. He has provided everything. One mind, one power, one principle, one God, one element. It is closer to me than my feet and my hands, than my own breathing. I am divine spirit. I am the Son of God, and in the presence of God I live eternally. I thank the Father for the perfect harmony. This summoning can be done by combining it with the flames, when a student knows them. Treatment to develop divine love. My soul is filled with divine love. I am surrounded by divine love. I radiate love and peace to the whole world. I am aware of divine love. God is love, and there is nothing else in creation but God and His expression. All human beings are expressions of divine love, so I cannot stumble upon anything other than expressions of divine love. All this is the truth now. This is the present case, the present state of affairs. I don't have to push for this to happen, I'm watching it right now. Divine love is the nature of the self. There is nothing but divine love is the nature of the self. There is nothing but divine love, and I know it. I understand perfectly what divine love is. I have conscious realization of divine love. God's love burns in me for all humanity. I am a focus of God, radiating divine love to everyone I meet, to everyone I think of. I forgive everything, everything that needs my forgiveness, absolutely everything. Divine love fills my heart and everything is perfect. Now I radiate love to the whole universe, without exception to anyone. I experience divine love. I manifest divine love. I thank God for this. The two keys to hell are criticism and resentment, commonly called spite. These can be permanently destroyed with the above treatment. When the student knows the flames, they can do this treatment by applying the pink flame. Love is not limited to feeling affection for another. Love has many ways of manifesting itself, and one of the greatest is to express the desire to forgive and to send the good to others. To seek to know God is to love Him. To try to purify thought is to love God. To try to correct unpleasant concepts is to love the neighbor for whom one feels that displeasure. To like beauty and art is love. Love of God. There is no fear in love. Love destroys fear. Fear has torment, and he who fears has not been perfected in love. 1 John 4:18. The 15 points to know if I'm really on the trail. Yes, I always look for the good in every situation, person, and thing. If I resolutely turn my back on the past, whether good or bad, I live only in the present and future. If I forgive everyone without exception, it doesn't matter what they have done, and then I forgive myself wholeheartedly. If I consider my daily work or task as something sacred, trying to fulfill it as well as possible, whether you like it or not. If I do everything in my power to manifest a healthy body, and a harmonious environment around me. I do try to render service to everyone else, without doing it in a nasty or annoying way. I do take advantage of every opportunity to make the truth known to others, in a wise and discreet way. If I unconditionally avoid criticism, refusing to listen to it or support it. I do devote at least a quarter of an hour to meditation and prayer. If I read at least 7 verses of the Bible or a chapter of some instructive book on the truth for this age. If I do a special treatment daily to ask for or demonstrate understanding. We must either affirm it knowing that God is with us, or entrust the Ascended Master Lady with nothing of the ruby ray, as with the golden ray hosts. If I train myself to give my first thought to God when I wake up. If I pronounce the word throughout the world every day, either in our daily exercises, or especially, let us say, at 12 o'clock in the day. If I practice the golden rule of Jesus, instead of just admiring it. He said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." The important thing about the golden rule is that we should practice it even if others don't practice it toward us. But also, there is no rule that does not have its opposite, so do not allow others to do to you what you would be unable to do to them. I do realize perfectly well that what I see is nothing but a mirage, which can be transformed by means of scientific prayer. In order to demonstrate harmony and perfection of everything in your life, ask yourself once a week if you are fulfilling all these points. Wherever forgiveness is mentioned, the prayer of the violet flame can be inserted. I am the law of forgiveness and the transmuting flame of all the wrongs committed by me and by all humanity. Of course, this is for students who already know the flames. My world contains everything. How many times have you found that you are missing something to continue what you are doing? If it is getting dressed, you need a pin or a needle and thread. If it's a job, you need a pen or any instrument, etc. You're looking at a material appearance, nothing more. The truth is always in the spirit, as you well know. When you think and look for correspondence in the spiritual, you think, what is the situation like on the spiritual plane? Your mind always says, it's perfect. Then meditate on what perfection would be in this case. Perfection in the event that you are getting dressed and you are missing a pin or a needle and thread, will be that you have at that moment what you are missing, or that you do not have a need for those gadgets, right? Well, you have already seen that your body is made of the substances of the plane which it inhabits. It contains all the items that can be found in all the other objects, items, etc. that are on the planet. In addition, you have been accumulating in all your past lives, everything you can need and use. Each experience with all the necessary accessories to have fulfilled and overcome it is already in your etheric body, as memory, and in your causal body as constructive being. You therefore have full authority to declare, my world contains everything, and it is not true that I can lack what I need at any time. Spiritually, what I need is with me, and I claim the material appearance because I need it for my matter at this time. You'll see a little milagrito, if you've understood the principle I've been explaining to you. Either you find a pin or a needle with thread, almost without having to look for them, or the thing that can make up for the lack immediately comes to mind, the way to fix the situation, or someone comes in and makes it easier for you. In the event that one of you asks me the question that others have asked, what would happen if I found myself in a desert and I lacked water, for example, and I didn't find it? I answer that once you know this law, this principle, and apply it 2 or 3 times, there will never again arise in your existence any case in which you may lack absolutely nothing that you may need. That case of the desert without water is karmatic. It is an experience that was necessary at a given moment, but if you are already learning spiritual laws as advanced as this one, you're past the desert experience, you've overcome it, and it's never going to happen again. The step taken is outdated, and it must not be taken again. The cuckoo. You know what El Cuco is. In Venezuelan, it's the monster with which they scare boys into behaving well. Dr. Fox says, this article is for people who have a concern. I never scold anyone who is worried. That's the equivalent of kicking the fallen. Does a person care because it amuses him? Of course, there are complaining people who are happy to act that way. That's a condition that needs urgent attention, but it's not a case of concern. No, worry is a hell from which the victim feels great relief at the slightest sign of escape. And can worry really be avoided? It depends on whether or not you understand the truth of being. If you truly understand it, the answer is yes. Consider this, a cuckoo you don't believe in has no power to bother or worry you. The cuckoo of your childhood no longer frightens or deceives you, because you no longer believe in him. But when you were 3 years old, it had the power to make your heart run, to turn your cheeks white, to make your knees tremble, and to make you vomit up all the food in your stomach. Under special conditions I could have killed you. But today it doesn't blink you an eyelid, because you don't believe in it anymore. That's it. Nothing has really changed. There is no such cuckoo, nor did it ever exist. The only difference lies in yourself. You've changed the way you think. You found out it was a falsehood and you are free. Now, exactly the same thing happens with every other form of evil that is manifesting in your experience, for all evil is a cuckoo and nothing more. It's happening to you because you believe in it, and it will disappear the moment you stop believing in it. The only life that keeps him alive is given to him by your belief in him. Any situation, and even any material object, can be changed by means of a spiritual treatment, or what we call scientific prayer. It doesn't matter what is going to happen tomorrow, something very different is going to happen because of the scientific prayer: a dislocated ankle, the consequences of having stained a suit with ink, the court trial that happened last week, or the operation that is going to be done next week and all the consequences that may come out of it. All of them can be totally erased, even from the consciousness of the whole world, or the character of all these things can be changed to make it appear that they are blessings to all concerned. Sometimes it happens that you buy an item, and when you get home you realize that it was not what was right for you, and you think that it is already too late. Never mind. Treat the case scientifically and you will see that after all the purchase was correct, you will rejoice in the acquisition, or in some other way you will have satisfaction in having bought it, since everything becomes good by treating it by scientific prayer. All this is the truth, So this proves that the material plane is not real, in the sense of being fixed or permanent, and once we grasp this truth it no longer has the power to bother us. The truth is that our material conditions are nothing but the outward reflection of the convictions we have in our minds, and since we have the power to change these convictions, it is evident that we can change the outward reflections, too. Your problem right now is exactly like the cuckoo of your childhood. It's the cuckoo, and the only power it has is the power you're giving it by believing in it, and the way to do that is to pray enough, scientifically, or get somebody to help you, and you'll see that unhappy picture transform into something totally different, or disappear completely. With enough prayer you can get it erased from your memory, but that won't be necessary because you won't want to forget the cuckoo, it's indifferent to you. Do you see why it is that the worry can be taken away? When you can say to yourself, yes, right now this seems like a calamity, but I know that with good treatment I can change this situation into something totally different. You can already say that the worries are over for you and it is only a matter of time before health, harmony, and prosperity are permanent in your life. The Bible says, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The right thinker enters it and is saved." The money. Master Fillmore, founder of Unity, says, "It is not a crime to be rich, and there is no virtue in being poor, as the reformers have led us to believe. The evil consists in amassing money, preventing it from circulating freely so that it reaches those who need it. Those who put their wealth to work in a way that contributes to the well-being of the masses are the salvation of a country. If everyone had what we call the consciousness of poverty, misery would be as general as it is in India and China. There, the millions of inhabitants are perennially tied to the thought of their poverty, suffering scarcity in all its forms, from the cradle to the grave. The burden of poor thinking falls on the land, and year after year it withholds its produce so that thousands die of hunger. The consciousness of prosperity must be formed. First of all, we have to deny all the old and false ideas of scarcity, of restriction, of dependence on fixed channels. The idea that something is very expensive comes from the state of our stock market. We make the comparison of the cost with the quantity we own and instantly decide whether we can acquire or not. If our assets are small, the object seems expensive to us. If our assets are large, we don't give any importance to the cost and we acquire it. The object is not that it is expensive, but that consciousness is poor. You may be thinking that there are things that merchants ask too much for, though. But I repeat that if you had many millions to throw away, it would not even occur to you to think whether the merchant is asking too much or not. Therefore it is not the scarcity but the state of your purse, and this depends on the state of your consciousness. Since you were a child, you may have heard about money, cost, and what could or could not be acquired. How few can boast that when they were little they asked to buy something for them and that their parents replied, "Today you can't because there is no money." That, "there is no money," immediately assumed the character of the monster that denies everything, that interrupts everything, that spoils everything, that ogre who delights in seeing us deprived and sighing, until we end up bowing our heads resigned to fate. How few can say that their parents answered, "Let's think that Daddy God wants to give it to us and that he is just waiting for the moment to surprise us." And this is the thought that I wish you to learn by heart today and repeat it in your mind, or out loud, every time you have a desire or a need, and that you find yourself comparing what you have in your wallet with the cost of what you are desiring. We are going to think that God wants to give it to us and that he is just waiting for the moment to surprise us, to form their prosperity consciousness. You already know that the truth is that in the Spirit everything is already given, granted, and waiting for us to claim it, and that's why we teach you to say thank you before it appears. But this idea is determined to elude it. The subconscious has no discernment. To him, your word is law. What he hears you say, what he sees in your thoughts, the picture you imagine, are orders that he strives to carry out with the utmost exactness. The only thing that shakes him is the voice of the higher self. The high vibrations of truth crumble the petrified, crystallized, we say, in the subconscious, and it would take him years of psychoanalysis to discover them. And yet the psychoanalyst will tell you that if you don't replace the nail you just pulled out with something, you relapse into the same evil. This is why metaphysics first denies evil, then affirms the truth in order to replace what is being erased with the highest and most powerful, the truth, which will never have to be erased. The simple, childish affirmation I gave you to memorize contains a threefold intention. The first is that you form the idea that everything comes from God, that is, from the divine substance, and that these ideas are removed from the fixed channels. Your fixed channels are either the salary you receive, or the organization where you work, and if you don't need to work, your fixed channels are either your father's or your spouse's business, or the estates that produce your income, in short, whatever it is that provides you with the sum of money with which you make your expenses. And the whole race is accustomed to think that if these were to fail, it would bring ruin. Few realize that the channels of prosperity and abundance are infinite because they are from God, and they are God. They do not know what you already know, that every need comes already equipped with the material it requires to fill it, that is to say that, as they say in metaphysics, supply and demand are one. On earth they are two opposite things. In the truth they are one and the same thing. The second intention of the affirmation I gave you is that you get used to the fact that God's will is magnanimous, that God longs for you to have precisely that which you are needing or desiring, because the desire and the need for something occur at the moment when you are preparing to enjoy it or take advantage of it. Not a minute before, not a minute after. And if it has been longing for years, or feeling the lack of something, that something has been knocking on your door for the same years, so that you can finish receiving it, and it is your subconscious that is rejecting it and making it wait, to fulfill the order you gave it, when you accept the idea that it would be impossible for you to fulfill your desire, or because you considered it too expensive, prohibitive, or too difficult. The Bible explains this in the following way, and I have repeated it to you many times: every land where you put the sole of your foot I have given you as an inheritance. The feet are symbols of understanding, and earth is a symbol of manifestation. In other words, the translation of the wonderful phrase is, every manifestation that you can conceive I have already given you. Inheritance is what no one can take away from us. It's ours by right. The third intention behind the statement I gave you is in the phrase, and he's just waiting for the moment to surprise us. Often students see that they don't get a demo as quickly as they expected, they come to complain to me. They almost blame me for being unfulfilled, as if I had promised them something I did not give them. This is a childish attitude. It is a remnant of bad parenting that has remained with them from when they were children in their parents' house, and it proves that they were spoiled children who were never denied their slightest whim. The demo is always made and ready to appear. He's just waiting for the right moment. There are an infinite number of motives that obstruct the exit or destroy the opportune moment, and the demonstration has to wait for another opportune moment. One of the most common reasons is inconsistency, or lack of firmness once the treatment has been thought, invoked, claimed, and done. Or the student has doubts, or give in to the temptation to go out and talk about it, or else he expresses in his words concepts that deny the truth he declares in the treatment. This is all very natural. There is no need to be impatient either with oneself or with the delay of the demonstration. We're not perfect and we're learning to be. It is not the fault of the subconscious that it is heavy and flattened with old ideas and habits. Another very common defect is that of thinking that you have to be repeating the treatment for it to be done. This is equivalent to continually opening the oven to spoon over a cake that is being baked. A treatment is done only once, as excellently as possible. The truth is seen and declared. Thanksgiving is given, and fulfillment is left to God. When the thought of what we need comes to mind and that has not yet been realized, we do what Emmett Fox called treating the treatment, that is, we say, I've already done the treatment and I don't have to worry, thank you, Father. You can give infinite thanks as much as you want. That does reaffirm the demonstration, and it's rejoicing. Rejoice and give thanks to God in everything. When you give someone a gift as a surprise, or when they surprise you, it's a surprise. Even when you've been wanting something and someone to give it to you, it surprises you and makes you happy. The phrase of the treatment makes you wait for the surprise that God is going to send you, at the moment when you least expect it, and this enthusiastic expectation is the faith that moves mountains. Don't confuse it with hope. Hope is a poor sister of faith, says Emmett Fox. Hope is anguish mixed with doubts, faith is joyful expectation. Two very different things. How different it is to say, I have hope, and I have faith. I have received news that at least 2 of my students are short of money. You can be very spiritually advanced and not have the consciousness of prosperity. Just as you can have a great prosperity consciousness and not be spiritual at all. It's that he's developed one aspect of life, and he hasn't touched the other. When a lack of abundance is manifesting, you have to get to work on that aspect. You have to meditate a lot on abundance. As I said to one of my disciples these days, where man does not touch his thought of scarcity, abundance manifests itself in terms of waste. In the jungles. On the ordinary mountain. If we don't live mowing the grass in the garden, it piles up until it covers the house, and it's because we spend our time thinking precisely that we have to live by tackling it. In the jungles there is no one who thinks, nothing grows here. There is no one who spews poison to kill her. There is no one who thinks, what a brave summer. The bushes are all going to dry up. And won't it rain? Master Fillmore goes on to say, anguished thought must be eliminated, and the perfect abandonment of nature must be adopted, and when to this attitude is added the realization that unlimited resources are possessed, the divine law of prosperity will have been fulfilled. To achieve this attitude of abandonment of all worry, it is necessary to meditate on the divine abundance manifested. You have to examine yourself to see where you are unconsciously putting the brakes on prosperity and abundance. It must be affirmed, against all evidence, that we are children, heirs of all that the Father possesses, and that not only does He desire to see us manifest riches and satisfactions, but that all mankind desires the same for us. That no one wants to deprive us, or harass us, because all of humanity contains God, and God does not divide Himself in two to disharmonize with Himself. There is a way to produce what remedies an immediate need. It does not serve to produce constant abundance, but it does produce what fills the gap of the moment. It is to make a mental picture, made of pure imagination, and to see oneself filling one's wallet, depositing it in the bank, distributing it and feeling the satisfaction of being able to give and make others happy. But you have to do it even to feel with your fingers the grain of the paper, the crunch of the bills, the weight of the coins, etc. This has to be repeated a lot for the subconscious to be impressed and reproduced. You don't have to ask yourself, and where can it get to me? The channel is left to God. The latter is perhaps what remains of value when the money that is going to arrive has been spent, that is, the realization that God's channels are infinite and unexpected. Don't forget to insist that it come under grace and perfectly. The magic of tithing. The practice of tithing has become a lifelong habit among many of the disciples of the truth. So much so that they already think of the amount of their money as if it were only 90% of what they actually have, since they automatically put aside the 10% that they consider to belong to God, without ever even dreaming of breaking the custom. They do this intelligently, that is, as a principle, because they have perceived that it is the right thing to do. The result of this procedure is that these people are imminently free from all monetary hardship. Although they may have other problems, they never suffer from deprivation or failure in their material prosperity. They comply with the law, so they inevitably manifest the result. This fact is becoming widely known today, but what is not very well understood is the spiritual principle that governs it. I am asked all sorts of questions as to the manner of tithing, under what circumstances it is permissible not to tithe, what sums should be tithed, in what form tithe should be divided, and whether tithing practice is an infallible recipe for enrichment, etc. The truth of tithing is that those who set aside 10% of their net income for the service of God, and not for the main object of profit but simply because they feel it ought to be so, find that their prosperity increases by leaps and bounds, until all fear of poverty disappears, while those who tithe because they inwardly consider it a good investment, expecting to be returned much more than they give, are always disappointed, and from their own point of view are wasting their money. Malachi says in verse 10, chapter 3, "Bring me all the tithes into my barn, and let there be food in my house, said the Lord of hosts, and you will see if I do not open the windows of heaven to you and pour out such a blessing on you that there will be no place to receive it." Tithing has been recommended in many parts of the Bible, and in all ages, where there have been believers in God who have made this practice the cornerstone of their homes. This building built upon that cornerstone has secured them from every material need, which is so essential to the development of the soul. It is a well-known fact that many of today's most prosperous businessmen, great industrialists, attribute their success to having formed this habit in their youth and having maintained it. Thousands of students of the truth have escaped what seemed to be hopeless poverty, and entered into security and comfort through the practice of tithing. The principle, or law of tithing, once recognized and accepted, raises the question, and what is to be done with tithing? In divine science, tithing does not refer to general charity, nor to material donations. It is dedicated to the dissemination of the knowledge of the truth in some form or another, usually in the maintenance of those institutions or activities that deal with this. Anyone who understands the spiritual idea knows very well that the only thing that would save the world is to know the truth in order to be free from all difficulty, that until man comes to know the metaphysical truth, nothing will really benefit him, that until this knowledge becomes general, it does not matter how much secular education, how many scientific discoveries, nor projects of social reforms, nor political reconstructions will achieve any effective good, and that once this knowledge becomes general, all political and social problems will automatically be adjusted, and all forms of charity and systems of beneficence will become unnecessary. We who know the truth of being are fiduciaries of humanity. Those who do not know this truth will continue to give their money to promote charitable works, but we know that our first duty is the dissemination of the truth. Jesus said, "Know the truth and it will set you free." Determining the amount of tithing is very simple. It is not, as some students suppose, 1/10 of what they can save each month. It means 1/10 of the entire amount. Of course, a merchant will deduct the expenses of his business before counting his net profit, but it is on the net profit, before deducting any personal or living expenses, that tithing must be made. People who live on a salary receive their net profit directly in this way, but they must add to it all other income, dividends, investments, etc. It is, of course, useless to emphasize that there is not the slightest obligation to tithe at all, until the state of consciousness comes to each one that makes him see that it is preferable to do so. That is, it's best not to attempt tithing until you're mentally prepared to do so. To give out of a supposed obligation or a sense of duty is to give with fear, and no fear ever brought prosperity. Paying a tithe is a great leap of faith. It often happens that a student of divine science feels a deep desire to put all his faith in God, and to possess a truly scientific faith. To desire this is to have it automatically. However, absolute conviction of the latter cannot always be achieved, and by the fact that he cannot feel this sensation he believes himself to be lacking in faith when in fact he is not, but if he practices tithing out of conviction that it is right, this will be the test of his faith, regardless of what his feelings tell him for the moment. Some believe that because they are in a bind it is not possible for them to tithe for the time being, but that they will do so as soon as their circumstances allow it. This is to lose all meaning because the greater the present difficulty, the greater the need to tithe, for we know that the present difficulty is due to a mental attitude, probably subconscious, and of course the circumstances cannot change until there is a change in the mental attitude. Tithing, in spiritual truth, will be proof that the attitude is changing, and will be followed by the desired demonstration. The secret of demonstrating prosperity by tithing is to realize that the only source of our supply is God, and that business or employment, investments, or customers are but the channel through which the providence that comes to us from God is being manifested at that moment. Now, then, the practice of tithing for spiritual reasons is the concrete proof that this idea has been accepted, and the inevitable consequence of that acceptance is visible prosperity. It is easy to see, then, the difference between the spiritually understood practice and the other, material and useless, of setting aside 1/10, often reluctantly, in the hope of making a good investment. As an expression of what spiritual righteousness is considered, tithing is an inevitable success. As a selfish investment it goes to certain failure. The answer to the question of how often tithing should be paid is also very simple. The correct time to pay tithing is when you receive your allowance, or your weekly or semi-annual payment, depending on how you receive your rent. It's usually better to pay small sums than a single large one, but you can't give a rule of thumb. Give, and it shall be given unto you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken, overflowing, for the measure which you shall use toward others, the same shall be used toward you. Luke 6 verse 38. Many teachers of truth have testified to the infallible benefits of tithing. One of them, John Murray, wrote, "According to the Hebrew law, the tithe means the 10th part, and refers to a form of taxation by which the Hebrews had to give, by Levitical law, the 10th of their produce, of the land or of beasts, etc., for the service of God. It is remarkable that as long as this system prevailed the Hebrew nation prospered, collectively and individually, and wherever it has been honestly applied and finally has never failed. If the farmer refused to give the land a certain amount of corn and potatoes, of which he has received from that land, we would have no crops. Why, then, do we expect to receive abundance from God, if we give so miserably to His holy cause? Those who tithe are always sure that they have God as their partner. The connection between tithing and prosperity is, after all, simply an expression of that law that what we do to the universe does to us. What we give, generosity or parsimony, we will receive back. It also attracts the same. That what a man sows, that he reaps, and that no man escapes the law. Leviticus says. And all the tithe of the earth, whether it be of seed or of the fruit of trees, belongs to the Lord. The Lord is sanctified. Leviticus 27 verse 30. Honor the Lord with his substance, and with the firstfruits of your abundance, and your barns will overflow and your presses will burst with new wine. Proverbs 3 verses 9 and 10. After Jacob received the vision that told him that there was a mystical ladder from earth to heaven, the ladder of scientific prayer and righteous activity, he immediately decided to adopt the practice of tithing, realizing that God will be with me, and he will protect me in my ways, he will give me bread and clothing. The step you're on. If you like everything you've read so far in this New Age teaching, if several times in reading it you have found yourself saying, "But I already knew this instinctively," I would say that I am a born metaphysician, because I practice many of these things. Then you've already gone through all the other sects, religions, and creeds that exist on the planet, in the course of your past lives. All his practices and theories have been accumulated. The constructive is in your causal body, which is the aura of your higher self. The destructive is in your lower vehicles, physical body, emotional body, etheric body, and mental body, but above all, in your etheric body is all the memory of everything that has happened to you in all your lives. Nothing is lost. Write this down nicely. Nothing is lost. So, if you are attracted to the metaphysical teachings, if you understand them and they absorb you, it means that you are ready to go up a step. If you don't accept them, if you don't understand them, if you're not attracted to them, if they repel you, it means you can't digest them yet. You have to stay in another sect, a lesser one, where the principle of mentalism is not practiced. In some of them you will find it explained superficially but without giving it much importance. All of those sects and doctrines have things that you instinctively crave. They will give it to you, and they will also give you an accumulation of knowledge that fills your mouth, your mind, and your satisfactions. They will also impose numerous rites, rituals, physical practices, prohibitions, diets, bondage on you, all of which can be enclosed in one word: limitations. But if you need them, that's your present stepping stone. We do not want to denigrate, diminish, or discredit any doctrine. Just because a little brother is a child doesn't mean he's seen as inferior. We just want to reassure you of where you are now. How and why do we know that metaphysics is the last teaching sent to the planet by the masters of the wisdom? By many signs. Let's start at the beginning. No other doctrine teaches you how to solve your problems, the master key, or to manifest everything you want. I'll give you a gift. Nor to turn the impossible into the possible, El Cuco. Nor does it teach you to carry your affairs to triumph with such sweetness and harmony, God in business. Nor to manifest material well-being in a short time, the magic of tithing. Nor does it give you immediate spiritual development, how to develop divine love and presence. When we come to this reincarnation, we are erased from all the knowledge acquired in other lives because Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Knowledge fills us with intellectual pride. Those who are ready to enter into the spiritual studies of the New Age are lazy in schools during their childhood, and unwilling to undertake intellectual studies when they are older. A step taken must never be taken again. Anyone who feels the desire to accumulate knowledge is because he or she failed to do so in a previous life. Third point, the New Age is the age of liberation. In this age there will be no more complicated rites, the thousands of trifles that take time away for better, more interesting things. Thus, when at the time of the temple in Jerusalem, the prevailing religion ordained that each Levite had to comply with more than 600 religious details, rituals, and requirements daily. Dr. Fox says that the poor lived under a consciousness of inadequacy, of slavery, of sin because, according to the creative principle or law of mentalism, to feel and consider oneself a sinner is, in fact, to be in sin. Not being able to comply with such rigor, they punished themselves mercilessly. If the directors of sects and religions that you practice manifest sickness, misery, pain, sorrow, calamities, etc., you will know that these fruits are the product of minds full of errors and falsehoods, for Jesus said, "By their fruits you will know them." Don't listen to them any longer. They have nothing to teach you. You are more advanced than they are. Later in your study of metaphysics you will learn to burn your own karma and that of others as well, without pain, without suffering, applying the divine and wonderful violet flame of liberation by love, that is the gift of the ascended Master Saint Germain, avatar of the New Age, and by then you will be able to invoke from your own causal body all the knowledge and abilities that are yours by right of consciousness, and that you have accumulated. For the time being, you can practice this formula. I am the divine wisdom of God, He in me knows everything. It continues with the statement entitled, The Powerful Word, which you already read earlier. The practice of the presence of God, which is what these studies are really called, cleanses and unties you, instructs you almost without the need for books because Jesus said, The Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send you in my name, will teach you all things. It frees you from an infinity of limitations that you once believed were your duties to fulfill, and one of the greatest liberations that will come to you is that you will know how to heal at a distance, solve the problems of others also at a distance. You will no longer have those problems, which frees you from working in the material as others who do not have the divine resource that you have at your disposal have to do, and many times you will see situations transformed with your mere presence. For it is your state of consciousness, spiritual consciousness and divine consciousness, that raises the electronic frequency of the lower vibrations around you, which belongs to others. Understand, it is the awareness that you have that in you, in your neighbor, is the presence of God. What is the Christ? I have always taught you that the Christ is our truth. Each one's truth and that He is perfect and almighty. It is the noblest thing in each one. Let's break it down to understand it better. You know that everything has life. That which has life hears, feels, and responds. Something dead or asleep neither hears, nor feels, nor responds. Correct? Remember that. Life is the ability to hear, feel, and respond, answer or react. We're going to draw several blueprints. We'll put here, first life. Everything that is living or has awakened to life has life first and foremost. Now comes, what kind of life? Elemental or earthly? If it is elemental, will it be of air, water, or fire? If it is earthly, will it be mineral, vegetable, animal, or human? Once this has been defined, individuality comes. Everything is one and undivided, but each thing shows a facet or special talents, virtues, or attributes that are not common to all. In humans, for example, what does it look like? Do you have black, white skin? The blue, black eyes? What peculiarity does it manifest? And if there is such an infinite variety of classes, aspects, virtues, peculiarities, talents, types, races, kingdoms, etc., why is it said that all is one and the same being? First of all, we know that everything, absolutely everything, comes from the same source. That which we call God. Therefore, everything is not only one child of God, but the Son of God, because there is no exact repetition. Everything is individual. That's just that, one thing, one copy. Well, but in that infinite variety, there is something that betrays filiation, brotherhood, equality. You have to do something that is accurate in everyone. A kind of trademark, because it comes precisely from God. Just as in a family in which all the members are of different types, that no one resembles another, but there is something in all that points to kinship or filiation. Something in the shape of the nose, or in the ears, or in the speech. Something that nails you with the last name. What unites us all as God's relatives? What identifies us? Three things: consciousness, intelligence, and love. Every living thing has consciousness, intelligence, and love. No one is so bad that they don't love even their mother or their dog. No one who is alive fails to manifest it in some form. Either your heart is beating or you're breathing. Something is conscious in him. Something responds, something feels, something hears. He is alive, he is already conscious. And this is symbolized by three primary colors: blue, yellow, and red. Everything, absolutely everything has those three colors. Everything has consciousness, or life, or what is the same, will, that's blue. Everything has intelligence, yellow. Everything has attraction, repulsion, adhesion, and cohesion, that is, love, red. Everything, in all the realms of creation. Human ears are clumsy. The finest being of hearing does not hear the clumps responding, nor the cells of his body, for example. No one realizes, therefore, that the invisible, astral, etheric planes are a jumble of sounds, of voices, a cry of all that contains life. We have said that everything that has life hears, feels, and responds. The human body, being massive, solid, cannot stand this cries. I pray for you that when these spiritual senses are awakened, you will not be alone. Let them be accompanied, and the best companionship is that of the Christ, that is, the superior self that can do everything, knows everything, dominates everything, which is infinite consolation, infinite love and tenderness. Now, what then is the Christ? It is the expression of these three conditions: consciousness, intelligence, and love in their highest degrees. Love in its purest degree. It is the purest blue will, that of God Himself. It is the most pure, lofty golden intelligence, like God Himself. It is the essence of divinity. It is all that we are but on the highest, purest, noblest, best, most perfect scale. It is the essence of truth. It is the pattern and design of God's will for each one of us. We should meditate on this every day. When we think of Him, we plug ourselves in, as it were, on the Christ plane. We continue to think of Him, and after 20 seconds we experience a step like a step, we feel closer. In the next 20 seconds we feel it, or we begin to feel it as a sweetness and as if something lifts us up. In the third 20 seconds we feel happy, that we love Him and that He loves us. If we do this every day, we will become more like God's design every day. We become better, purer, more beautiful, more intelligent, more alive and alert. But remember, too, that He has a voice and an ear. That it's not the same ear and the same voice of our body. It is a being united and apart at the same time. United to us and apart from us. That's why we can talk to Him and know what He says. I hope you have advanced a little in the understanding of the Christ within, for I want you all to burn the very ancient karma that is crystallized, and this is burned by the Christ, whom Emmett Fox called the Lord of Karma. There is the cosmic Christ, and there is the individual Christ, that is, the divine, glorious being within our hearts, made of universal light and created by God Father and Mother. It develops like a seed through 14,000 years of evolution. In our consciousness. This Christ being is an intelligent being, living in each of us, and who is more interested in you than you are yourself. For millions of years it has been giving you even breath, and has sustained you in the hope of achieving an opportunity to externalize the divine plan that you have on the plane of creation. Accept this now and let this God, through you, fulfill His own pattern of perfection, His mastery and dignity, His balance and beauty, His harmony and freedom. Let's make the following statement together. I now accept the truth that I possess a divine, glorious being, who at this moment is developing and bringing into my life and my senses the realization of my own divinity. I affirm that I have in the center of my head a ganglion, chakra, called faith, which generates and produces all the faith that is necessary to me, so that I can never again say that my faith is insufficient. Yes, I have God in me, yes, my whole being is made of the essence of God Himself, the body of God Himself, my Father, Mother. I have in my being all the qualities and all the attributes of God Himself. Thank you, Father, that this is the truth. There is but one power in the universe. Accept now that the presence of God in your heart, which is closer than your feet and your hands, closer than the breath that enters through your nose, because it is your own life that makes your heart beat, that presence of God which is called I Am, is one and indivisible with the beating of your heart. Put your hand over your heart when you meditate and invoke your exquisite presence to guide your meditation. Every 2,000 years the Master of the world sends to earth a Christ, that is, a perfected being who wishes to incarnate and bring to the mass of humans of that age, the religion that suits that aspect of evolution. That religion, in the course of 2,000 years, becomes the spiritual stimulus of the masses incarnated at that time. As the ages of evolution have succeeded, the Master of the world has sent new Christs, one after the other. It is unfortunate that Christ Himself could not continue through all the changes, for all religions have been affected by resistances, antagonisms and rebellions that have been affected by resistances, antagonisms and rebellions that have always been provoked by the preceding religious wave, when it would be wonderful if wave after wave added its impetus, its strength to the next, making a great crescendo in which all humanity could come face to face with its own divinity. Today we are at the close of the time cycles. Faced with the opening of another cycle of 2,000 years, when the entrance of the ceremonial ray, as the seventh ray is called, begins to make itself felt by the lives. This ray will be the religion of the masses. The Christ is not a body, He is a consciousness. You know what I taught you, that consciences have life and intelligence. The Christ consciousness or our Christ exists because at the beginning of our creation by the Creator, what worked in us was that pure and beautiful consciousness. She has remained in high places, waiting for us to come and meet her. His name is the Christ, and all these Christs address themselves to the karmic tribunal, which is composed of 7 wisdom entities, and they asked his permission to put pressure on each one of us, cleansing ourselves of all crystallizations in order to evolve quickly, removing and sweeping away from the world all that is negative and establishing the kingdom of heaven on earth as soon as possible, for the earth is in great danger of being destroyed for lack of light, as you already know. The earth is, in what the masters call, in a recalcitrant state, and it is that humans do not pay attention. They do not want to change no matter how much our guides and beings of light do, and the angels and our Christs are suffering, something unusual, as you will understand. That is a state of universal chaos that threatens. The karmic court first gave permission for 2,000 Christs to do the test. We are 10 billion human beings, including the incarnate and the non-incarnate, who belong to human evolution, and no more than 3 billion are incarnated at the same time on Earth. The test worked, and the permit was increased to 200,000, then to 1 million, then to 10 million. Life. One of the aspects of God, or that which we call God, is life. God is life, among many other things. God is our life and that of all that exists. All life is one, yours, mine, the plants, the insects, the birds, etc. It belongs to us individually. It is an immense life in which we are floating. We are each a sponge in an ocean of life. We are accustomed to thinking that each of us alone possesses a quantity of life, and that this, like water in a well, surrounded by earth, evaporates and dries up, and that dirt or something can fall on it that infects and contaminates it. No. Absolutely nothing can happen to her, to that immense, inexhaustible, and indestructible spring. She can't die. It is a trickle of energy that flows through us, that penetrates us and therefore keeps us alive. That is, we are living beings because we are in it. Because the whole race believes that the human being is a separate and isolated little pool of life, that he is susceptible to disease, age, and death, the whole race manifests this belief, but when that opinion is erased, by dint of denying it and affirming the truth, they will cease to get sick, grow old, and die. The more the truth is thought and meditated upon, the sooner men will be freed from these false beliefs, because truth is cumulative. Know the truth, and it will set you free, Jesus said, and he also said, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour until everything was leavened. It couldn't be clearer. The kingdom of heaven is not what we have been offered for another plane if we behave well. It is the state of bliss, harmony, and advancement that we are seeking here. This meditation that is clarifying to you something that you did not know, that is removing cells that were dormant, is the leaven to which Jesus refers. This truth that you hear today will continue to work in you, until one day the idea suddenly shines up like a sun. For it will have leavened all the dough. We are accustomed and so hardened by habit to seeing each other that we are not astonished at the miracle represented by a character who speaks, thinks, moves, hears, and lives only by himself, without any wire connecting him to an electric current. It is not sown in the earth. And that other miracle that happens every minute, a child who, when separated from the mother who communicates her life to him, continues to live. And none of this catches our attention. Yes, all this should provoke us in constant wonder and contemplation. What is that? How's that? Or do you believe that this wonder, that miracle is made by the cup of coffee with milk? Food and eating are leftovers from the animal kingdom. They are animal instincts. Since they do not yet think or react, they have no intuition but instinct. They are still governed by the primitive cell, which was a stomach, or rudimentary desire. They blindly obey the principle of generation and the law of evolution, which commands the combination of the elements and the gradual alteration of vibrations. Man is already thinking, rational and intuitive. Your vibrations intensify at the thought of the higher ones. By listening, understanding, and accepting the truth of all things, it accelerates its frequency and of course rises flat. Meditation, as it is to think deeply and purposefully about these high concepts, advances the being rapidly. That's why I'm making you meditate. We are God's children, made of His own substance. We are sponges in an ocean of life. We don't need outside food. When we are well immersed in this truth and have realized it, we find ourselves eating less and less, automatically, without making any effort or sacrifice. The leaven of truth will have penetrated the whole lump. The cells of the body will be vibrating at high frequencies. Life is itself nourishment. She is health, energy, beauty. It's life. Have you heard of Teresa Neumann? The German woman who manifested all this in this era of ours? He went to the other plane a few years ago. I don't know the details of its transfer, but they must be very interesting and meaningful, although it was still imbued with rather obscure concepts. One day he stopped eating and drinking, and so he lived about 45 years, or until he left this plane. For several years she was constantly monitored by German government prosecutors to verify this truth. I had to do the report for a magazine and I had to research everything that was published about it. Her photos were of a fat girl, full of health and energy, a farmer who milked cows, sowed and harvested crops, handling the pickaxe and weeding as the best of it. It had a very original manifestation, and that was that on the Fridays of Holy Week the wounds of Christ were opened in his hands and feet. Later he came to keep them open at all times. They didn't get infected, and he never tasted a drop of water or a morsel of food again. The German government proved it. In the Bible, the words eat and drink mean to meditate and think. Drinking, or thinking, is the fluid, liquid thing that should not be chewed. Eating, or meditating, is stopped, deeply mumbled, and digested. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood dwells in me, and I in him. This is the bread that came down from heaven. He who eats this bread will live forever. God is life, the Son of God is that same life. To think, to meditate on the truth of God, is to eat of that bread, to appropriate that truth. To appropriate is to accept, to believe, as you know that what one knows one manifests. Meditate, then, on life on the terms I have given you. God is life, yours, mine, everyone's. We are sponges in an ocean of life. Life does not need to feed on the outside. What could communicate life to life itself, if it is the giver of life? Death. When a mother sees her child dying, or when a small child dies, or when a father or mother disappears, leaving an entire family without support, someone comes along and says to the afflicted for every comfort, this is a trial that God commands. We must resign ourselves to the Father's will. You know that these are blasphemies that indicate faith in evil and belief in a cruel God, invented by the minds of men. First of all, you know that death does not exist, it is only changing the way of living. It is just one of the many thousands of changes that human beings make in the process of their evolution. When the family grows, the house becomes small, and they move to a bigger one. When a pair of shoes becomes unusable, new ones are left and worn. That house and those shoes have already fulfilled their mission, and this is death. The end of a mission. You will not tell me that a child dies because he becomes useless or because he has learned what he came to learn. They won't tell me that a 24-year-old is worn, old, and useless, now is the beginning of his mission. God's will is that the human being completes his mission and that he reaches the end enjoying all his faculties, strong and healthy. It is of no advantage to God or man that one wastes a large part of one's sojourn on earth, deaf, half-blind, ugly, in that unnecessarily unpleasant state which is called old age or senility. Nor does God want the purpose of a life to be cut short, interrupted, or spoiled. You will have noticed that when a very old person disappears, no one sinks into despair. That death produces nothing but a sweet, affectionate emotion, accompanied even by a tender smile. The children of the one who leaves have their lives overflowing with their own interests, they hardly feel nostalgic for the old man or the old woman, and when he is finished burying, everyone resumes their lives without much commotion. That's the ideal. That is God's will. May the loved ones be separated without tearing, without a feeling of terrible emptiness, and may only pleasant memories remain, as well as certain joys that the one who left has passed on to a better life. Instead of wasting power and energy, fearing that a child, a mother, or a husband will die, and that is the surest way to see it happen, we should use that energy to say, well, I don't want any of my people to die until they finish fulfilling their mission. God's will be done, thank you, Father, that you have already heard me. And whenever the idea offers itself to the mind, say, no, thank you, I don't need you. I know the truth, like someone who dismisses an unwelcome salesman who arrives at the door. This is the knowledge of the liberating truth, it is what is called faith. You see why a being dies at the wrong time, and why he cannot die if any of those around him have faith. If a metaphysician manages to enter the patient's room, the positive vibrations of his thought change the negative polarity that prevails in the room, for light always dominates darkness, because the positive dominates the negative, for good dominates evil, because the truth distorts the lie. He knows that life is precious and that God does not want it to be cut short. The first thing he does is to remember the words that Jesus left us: "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth," and with the faith of one who knows the truth, he declares it and the sick are healed. You may ask what all beginners ask: what if you have an incurable disease? What if you've been in an accident that damaged a vital organ? What if it doesn't survive whatever is done to it? First of all, even religion has taught ad nauseam that, with God nothing is impossible. This must be taken seriously, I mean literally, that for spiritual power a destroyed organ or a so-called incurable disease represents obstacles only for humans. They are less than anything for life. She is indestructible, and it is foreseen that she will repair herself, if human minds do not block her path with their false beliefs. The negative pole is also God's, it's all from God. Not even God himself acts against free will, and if you prefer to place yourself at the negative pole, you will have everything that belongs to it. Smiling belongs to the positive pole. To the negative belongs the frown. If you want to change poles in the middle of a negative manifestation, smile, declare the present good, bless it and say to the negative, "I don't want to see you." That's all, and you'll see black turn into white, sad into happy, evil into good. Try. In most of the miracles that Jesus performed, he would say to the patient, "Your faith has saved you," and he would prove it, from healing a wound, mobilizing a paralytic, giving sight to the blind, and finally, raising the dead. No longer destroyed organs or so-called incurable diseases, but dead, 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 now in the grave, smelly, like Lazarus. Thus manifesting that for faith there is no such thing as the impossible. The disciples asked Jesus the same question you sometimes ask: "Why was I not given such and such a thing when I did all that you told me to do?" And he would answer them, "Because of your little faith." He never said that because he was the Son of God and the others were not, but the opposite. He said, "You are God's, and verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a mustard seed, ye shall say to that mountain, Go from here to there, and it shall pass away. And nothing will be impossible for you." Nor did he scold anyone for not having faith, because he knew that faith comes with knowledge. He explained to them why they could not perform the miracles he did. And he said to them, "All these things that I do, you will do also, and even greater things." I don't know what other interpretation can be given to something so categorical and so clear. Jesus taught metaphysics. The proof is that everyone who studies metaphysics performs miracles like Jesus. Now you will say that miracles are often manifested to people who do not know an iota of metaphysics. Of course. All you need is faith. That faith which they call blind, and which nevertheless produces results, is simply that the patient places his thought on God or on some entity, on a saint, or on the Christ, or on the spiritual plane, and at the same time he feels the trust he has placed in him. Trust, your anxiety relaxes. Shut up and wait. I have seen you and heard you protest countless times, but if I was sure that this was going to work for me, and nothing. Sure. Very safe. With tense muscles. Telling everyone who comes near you about the disease that you are sure to cure. The difference is subtle, but I think you've understood me. Every time Jesus healed someone, he said to him, "Go and tell no one." This was not out of modesty, but because it was part of the technique. The chick doesn't burst its shell until it's whole, feathers and all. You don't take a jelly out of its mold until it's firm. As below, so above. Every creation goes through 7 stages before manifesting itself externally. These stages are sometimes traversed in 1/100th of a second, depending on the spiritual power of the one who performs them. If his understanding and knowledge are great as in Jesus, the manifestation is instantaneous and means that the 7 stages followed one another with atomic speed, but if you are a beginner in spiritual science, the stages sometimes take years to complete. Words are spoken thoughts. They are sound vibrations, through which energy is dispersed, and in this case, the momentum of the manifestation is taken away. Students or beginners should curb the desire to comment on the treatments they are doing, those they plan to do and those they have just done, until the demonstration is very secure, very firm. In ancient Hebrew, the last creative stage, when a demonstration arises and the work is known to be finished, was called the Sabbath. That word gave rise to our Sabbath. In the Bible, from Genesis to St. John, it says that on the Sabbath all work ceases. Creation is described as having occurred in 7 days, i.e., the 7 stages mentioned above, and that on the Sabbath God rested from his work, that is, on the 7th day. Psychotherapy is discovering what metaphysics has always known, the relationship between human ideas and their physical ills. Even general medicine, so reluctant to recognize the mentally spiritual, has come to see in the worries the cause of ulcers and heart attacks. It won't take long for you to discover that resentment and remorse are cancer-producing crops. Feelings repressed by fear of sinning or offending, as well as the consciousness of guilt, cause paralysis, arthritis, and allergies. Matter is the sponge that absorbs everything that man does not want to go outside. There is one kind of feeling which is too strong and violent for any human matter to bear, and that is what we call the abstract negative. For example, the unbridled hatred of one race against another, from one nation to another, etc. Sometimes it is vented through a war and both sides are torn apart, impoverished, but in the meantime, there is bad blood that has to find a way out, which cannot be materialized in the subtle and refined texture of the human body because it belongs to a lower region, and which finds its refuge at last in lower forms, in the wild beasts, the lion, the tiger, the poisonous serpents, the poisonous insects, the harmful thorns of certain plants, and underground. On the other hand, there are feelings and thoughts so high, so spiritual and beautiful, that they do not find form in matter either, because it is coarse in comparison, and that they plan, as it were, always at the command of those who have created them. This, the abstract positive, is embodied in all the beauty it encounters, in snowflakes with their geometric shapes, in flowers, perfumes, etc., as far as the material vibration can bear it. Now, there is no human being who has not been enraptured, even if only once, by a landscape, a sunset, an evocative painting, a beautiful flower, a child, a beloved face, a poem, a music, a color, or a thought read. These emotions with their accompanying thoughts are pure, without malice, selfless, made of sensitivity and love. There is nothing on the physical plane that can embody them, however, they are creations of men and take living form. They become powerful entities. We call these beautiful, luminous, powerful entities angels, and there are human beings who possess legions that are at the command of their owners and creators. It was to these that Jesus was referring when he said, "Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, that they may not run out, where no thief can come and no moth destroys." See the right of conscience in the commandment, "Thou shalt not steal." Have you heard it said, "Mother's prayers reach the throne of God"? People consider this to be just a poetic form. It doesn't mean what it expresses. That is to say, when a mother's love is disinterested, unselfish, they live by producing angelic forms and directing them towards the object of their tenderness. When their affection is imbued with fear and anguish, the form is no longer angelic but distorted. Sometimes she becomes diabolical and produces what she fears. The child gets sick, suffers accidents, and also dies prematurely. The poor woman does not know and believes that it is God's will. She suffers her tortures resignedly, and hence the human symbol of the mother is Mary with her dead child in her arms, and Mary's name means sea, bitter. None of this is necessary, it does not represent the truth. To protect anyone against our own concepts and false promises, we metaphysicians treat each other in the following terms. According to God's will, I do not want any of my loved ones to suffer from illness, disharmony, accidents, or die before they have fulfilled their mission in this world. Therefore we shall never suffer, neither they for my disappearance, nor I for theirs. That is God's law, and I willingly conform to it. Thank you, Father, for your greatness. If you feel able to extend your thinking to include others outside of your immediate family circle, all the better. From now on you will never have to fear the pain of death, either yours or someone else's. Usually, people violently, or terrifiedly, reject an idea of death. This is counterproductive. When the idea presents itself, that is, it presents itself to the mind, all you have to do is calmly but firmly say, "No, thank you. I don't need you. I know the truth," and then proceed to think of something else. The idea that comes like this without provocation is not yours. It is an alien thought that floats, that goes in and out, or that passes through you, because the erroneous interpretation of death is so pervasive and so ancient that the whole race is paralyzed in that idea. This is why Jesus said, "The last enemy to be overcome is death," that is, the idea of death. No one wants to die. They are afraid of it, and therefore die before their time. Life has been cut short by fear, from 900 years that the patriarchs lived, to 90, which is the period that is lived today. Rare are cases of 100 years or more. These are of placid temperament. We have the inviolable right to keep all our faculties and all our organs intact for as long as we need, and as they are needed to us at all times as long as we live in a physical body, they must serve us to the fullest extent of capacity until the very moment we pass into the incorporeal plane. It is not true that we have to lose vehicles and instruments as indispensable as teeth, hearing, sight, feet, hands, vital organs, in short, the entire human team. This is an intelligent universe, and it would not be intelligent to build a car without wheels, a television without a screen, a phone without a speaker, etc., etc. As below, so above. From now on, whenever your anatomy wants to manifest some defect, just as every time one of those erroneous ideas of fear of losing or damaging a faculty comes to you, you will say politely, but firmly, "No. Far from it. I don't want to. You exist for my convenience, to serve me, and God does not make an incomplete idea. Thank you, I don't need it, such an absurd idea is of no use to me." This little scolding is only for your own conscience, your subconscious, to which you gave in the past an order that it is carrying out, for matter has neither voice nor vote. She doesn't know anything. It's just a vehicle, a thing. That does not mean that we should despise any of the channels provided by the Divine Spirit. Medicine is a channel and a resource provided for those who do not know the truth. If your faith has not yet been established, you must take advantage of all the advantages and all the weapons you have at hand. At the same time, since matter and spirit cannot be divorced, there are material elements that spirit uses at any given time, just as there are spiritual elements that matter receives with advantage. I mean that there are vibrations that change the chemical order in a substance, and chemicals that give off special radiation. After a spiritual treatment, there is sometimes an impulse to resort to a strictly physical process. He must be obeyed. He's an inspiration. Divine intelligence knows what it is doing. You will see how the spirit uses its material vehicles. It's amazing sometimes. But it shows us once again that God is not, as has been believed, separate from his creation, but intimately linked and pervading it all. Use all of God's channels. All. When you use a physical channel, let's say a doctor, a process, an aspirin pill, or whatever, bless the channel. Thus you increase the good it contains for yourself and for others. In this way you will be practicing the presence of God, for God is good. Use your angels. You may have legions. They are there to serve you. His nature is life, love, and goodness. To anyone you want to see protected, put an angel on them. When you lie down to sleep, put an angel at every door and window. No one will ever be able to approach with negative intentions. If he succeeds, he will feel a sudden reluctance and will quickly walk away, for the most powerful vibrations of good dominate those of evil as light illuminates darkness. When you leave your house alone, surround it with angels. Feel an angel next to the chauffeur taking you or your loved ones. This is love in action. Try it just once and you'll be forever convinced. With all this you will have realized that death is nothing but a rebirth. It is a continuation of life. In closing, I want to bless you with this affirmation: there is only one presence, one power in your life. God, the omnipotent good. Allopathic medicine psychologist. For our purposes, although medicine has a great variety of branches and ramifications, we will say that it has two major branches, general and specialization. We will say that the general strictly studies the human body, the anatomy, and the evils that manifest themselves in that anatomy. It is, therefore, a study of normal matter, in a healthy state, and the abnormal states that manifest themselves, together with the medicines that cure them. Specialization is then limited to a single sector such as psychotherapy, for example. But notice that no allopathic doctor, which is the usual medicine, when you consult him for a stomach ache, for example, ever asks if the patient is happy at home or at work, if he has mood disturbances because of people around him, and if he has worries. Now it is beginning to be understood that stomach ulcers are caused by problems that worry them, because there are problems that are of interest and do not cause suffering. No doctor is interested in knowing whether a patient's living conditions are pleasant or not, and as we will see later, There are a number of illnesses that are nothing more than discomfort and unhappiness, mismatch with the environment in which one lives, dissatisfaction with an environmental situation. The psychologist and the psychiatrist do try to determine if the patient is reacting to an external condition. Then there are a number of diseases that are nothing else, but since no one goes out to consult a psychiatrist when he has a stomach pain, what usually happens is that the doctor who is consulted is limited to finding out which of the foods are not digested well. And he opens a little book that contains the names of an infinite number of remedies and what they are for. From there, copy a recipe or give away a sample. If the patient returns to continue prescribing because the pain hasn't gone away, the doctor then says, "Oh, this is colitis or chronic appendicitis." He advises the operation, of course, for appendicitis, or recommends a strict diet for colitis, and the sufferer follows the same. The sick person is cured only in the end. We'll see why. In metaphysics, we study the environment and the problems of the sick, and we know what many of the diseases are due to. We know that colitis is psychosomatic, that the ailments of the liver, of the stomach, of the intestines as well, and that sugar in the blood is a very interesting and profound psychic complication. Since we know that everything has its origin in the mind, we can also relate external events to internal ones, and vice versa. God made us to be and be happy. A happy being is never sick, just as a sick person is never happy. You all know the fact that by interrupting the moodiness circuit with a smile, you heal your liver. Bile disappears. It's described in my book, Metaphysics Within Everyone's Reach, but let's remember it. When a person suffers a displeasure and ties his face, as we say, this gesture, which is nothing but an externalized or acted thought, has a direct influence with the pineal gland, which is the gland of psychic and astral vision. From there the bitter vibration descends through the cerebrospinal fluid in the spine, then it impregnates the liver, bitter and forms bile, and that bile again causes the expression of displeasure on the face, as well as the bitter taste with which the person wakes up. It's a vicious cycle that's very easy to break. All you have to do is feel happy. How do you feel happy? It's easy too, if you have the will. First of all, you have to smile. Obligatorily, even if they don't feel like it. The first smile will undoubtedly be forced, with the corners of the lips pointing downwards, but the second effort will be better. Now you have to start giving thanks out loud for all that you see yourself possessing. From a match, clothes, furniture, relatives, the sun if it's shining or the rain if it's falling. Everything, absolutely everything, represents a good at its appropriate time, and we would need it at a given moment, if we did not have it, so that, thinking about this, we are made to want to give thanks, to thank God. That's it, we're thinking about God, we're feeling gratitude, and this combination sweetens the liver. The vicious circuit is cut and the evil is cured. If we all followed this practice, our livers and our lives would never be disturbed. When one feels very distressed, to instantly heal the affliction one must immediately begin to declare, "I bless the good in this situation." There is no more efficacious way to make every affliction disappear, to prevent it from becoming the cause and effect of a greater evil, and to avoid forming karmas, for as you know, blessing increases the good that is blessed, transforms evil into good, and that is to see God where evil appears to be. It is the most perfect expression of faith. There is no evil that can resist the blessing of good that is hidden behind a semblance of evil. Try it and you will see how evil is transformed into good and every affliction is cured. Colitis and intestinal ailments are nervous results of the fears and discomforts that are being experienced in daily life, at home or at work. Very surprisingly, diarrhea is sometimes caused by too much study of spiritual things. It would seem that the spiritual should logically automatically heal what is wrong, right, but if the person mixes his negative, pessimistic, and painful thinking with his supplications to God, he is creating nonsense. A wrong figure of God is being formed. What he formed is a God, with a lower case, painful and purgative, but not of mercy. Many times beginners find that after the first lessons in metaphysics their stomachs loosen. They don't relate this to the lessons, of course, but it's because they've received a lot of new material, a lot of ideas at once, and the organism defends itself by eliminating everything that it hasn't been able to assimilate, and it goes through the intestines. We have 4 lower bodies. The emotional body, the mental body, the etheric body, the physical body. Etheric body, it is the repository of all the memories of all our lives. Of course, if in past lives there are such great impressions, experiences that are so outstanding or that have lasted a long time, we will be very influenced by those impressions, and everything that happens to us we dye it, as it were, with the color of that experience or that outstanding conviction. For example, I know a lady who spent many lives, and if not several, at least a whole and very recent life, being profoundly Catholic, and in the Victorian era when everything was melodrama. Novels, comedies, etc. She has thus brought into this life a deep-rooted habit of turning everything into melodrama, and everything religious into painful. For her, the figure of Christ is represented by the crucified one and the martyr. Dolorosa at her feet. Even her laughter is with her eyebrows in a circumflex accent. Of course, although she ardently desires to be happy, she cannot because her etheric body bends her in the sense of pain. It's the case that she enjoys the pain because it's where she feels most comfortable, more at home, more familiar, you know. In addition to the deformed etheric body, she has a very large, very uncontrolled emotional body, which makes her excessively emotional. It will be very difficult for him to accept the new metaphysical wave that is alienating the four bodies in a single mold in order to function in harmony and orderly. As for blood sugar, or what is commonly called diabetes, go through in your mind all those who suffer from that disease and you will remember that as a rule, they are all sweet-natured. External conditions, contrary to their way of being, affect them enormously. At first they are unable to react. They can't let go in protest or explode in anger because it's contrary to their innate self. It would do them a lot of good to be able to defend themselves with an explosion of words, but they don't succeed because of their original sweetness. Then that sweetness sours, builds up, and has to be vented somewhere. Diabetic coma is the inability to bear the burden of poisoned sweetness anymore, which manifests itself in sugar in higher amounts than usual, because once the vicious circle has formed, it is the defense that the body adopts. Relative defense, of course, since this form of defense also kills, but the fact is that due to the inability to react externally, one reacts at the expense of the interior. Who sucks the excess? Blood. I knew a psychoanalyst who recommended to a patient that he always have 20 earthenware plates on hand so that when he had a displeasure he would break them by throwing them against a wall. No doubt he did it so that the patient would not hold back. Surely he had a tendency to be introverted. But that would be a good remedy for diabetics. I'm going to end by telling you about a case I had recently. I took a girl to serve inside. The girl was preceded by a medical diagnosis of chronic appendicitis. The operation was not urgent, but it had to be operated on someday, the doctor said. After 3 days of being in my house, he got the pain. I decided first to check whether or not it was from the appendix or if, as I suspected, it was the result of the atmosphere of the house she had left. It was a house where there was no peace, where nothing that was done well because a sick old woman kept it boiling. The girl was in pain with vomiting. This is classic of appendicitis, as it is also typical of upsets. It could be one thing or another, but I wasn't going to be influenced by the diagnosis. I gave him 3 peppermints and said, "Suck one right now. In half an hour you suck another, and in the third half hour you suck the third." The pain went away and I took advantage of it and told her, "It's better that she doesn't repeat that pain because my agreement with the lady who sent you to me was that if she repeated the pain I would return you to her and you would have to continue working where you were. Also, I'm going to give you the good news that you don't have chronic appendicitis. What you have is a nervous pain from the upsets, which you had constantly, and since you don't have upsets here there is no reason for you to have that pain. Are you happy with me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you at peace?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you have everything you want?" "Yes, ma'am." "All right, then that pain is over." And so it was. This was inspired by Jose Gregorio Hernandez because I entrusted it to him. Since he is my protector, I told him that if she had to be operated on, he should do it. St. Paul says, "Pray without ceasing." If you don't have time for prayer, treatment, and meditation, that is, if you don't have time to devote to God, it's because all your time will be occupied with problems and illnesses. This is a subtle way of telling you that all the time you dedicate to the spiritual will be spent free of everything that worries you today. St. Paul says in his first epistle to the Thessalonians, "Pray without ceasing." We know that he did not mean by this that we should spend our lives on our knees and passing the rosary. We know that every thought, every emotion, every word we utter is equivalent to the most sincere prayers, and that it is the mental fear we hold that determines the character, bad or good, of what happens to us. All day and every day we are praying. How? For better or for worse. Praying without ceasing means that we keep our mind and soul vibrating on a high plane. You all know that the positive is high vibrational. That spiritual truth is of the highest order. That thinking the good is of the same highest vibration. That smiling, singing, praise and giving thanks with common sense, calmness instead of nervousness, charity instead of criticism, are all expressions of pure love, and this is the state of high vibration that amounts to the most powerful prayer that can be made. To remain at peace, content, and even-handed, is to pray without ceasing. Now I'll tell you the whole verse of St. Paul. It goes like this. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. In all things, give thanks to God, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Is it not astonishing how the great metaphysician Paul of Tarsus was able to summarize in so few sentences the technique of scientific prayer in its entirety? It is the science of life in a capsule. Be always joyful, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks to God, because that is God's will for you. You can't add a single word more, after you know the whys of these recommendations. I have summarized the teaching even more, but this does not mean that I want to make myself appear greater than Paul of Tarsus. No, but once you have absorbed the truth behind the appearance, I tell you that it is enough to remember the two phrases, be always joyful and in all things give thanks to God, so you all know what he means, pray without ceasing. I'm going to give you some simple and practical examples that if you adopt them you will be sure to be praying without ceasing. The first is the greeting. The verb to greet means health, to give, or to give health. Do you want anything more generous, more selfless, and nobler than to give health to your friend and family when you see them? But the greeting has lost all its meaning with custom and routine. It is done only as a gesture of courtesy, to comply with good manners, or, if greeting someone you know on the street, it is a sign of mere recognition. The metaphysician proceeds differently. It does one of two things. Either he puts intention into the greeting, and along with the smile and gesture he thinks, I give you health, or he says mentally, I salute your inner Christ. And it is not limited only to friends and family. He gives it to everyone he addresses, to the taxi driver who drives him, to the saleswoman in the store, to the photo he looks at in the newspaper, to the deliveryman, to the collector, to the bank teller, and especially to the cripples and beggars he meets on his way down the street. These trifles are darts charged with vibrations of powerful light that do more good to the recipient than the casual coin, if he is a poor person, or in passing indifferently if he is an acquaintance. In addition, it is returned in health and love. You will see this by seeing the attraction they exert and the good reception they show them everywhere. You will never again have complaints about how you have been treated by all those you contact, and you will be surprised at the praise with which you will be described, and it's because goodwill has an irresistible magnet. Don't bless everyone you see. Never bless the interns or the common people. Blessing accumulates that which is blessed, and it is not a proof of love or wisdom to bless the effects, for the accumulation of errors will also be increased and magnified, and according to the law of the boomerang, they will run to the one who gives them such a beautiful welcome, producing a great mental confusion. You have to bless the truth, the Son of God, or the Christ within, if you like that term better, whatever image of the perfect being you conceive, invoke it when the occasion offers itself, it's the same yours you're looking at in a mirror. God and the Son are one and the same. If it's easier for you to think that every atom of what you're seeing is divine substance, think of it that way. Embrace your own inspiration. It's yours, the one that suits you, the one offered to you by your God. Giving health, by greeting, is more than wishing good behavior for the body. That would be nothing more than addressing the effects. It refers to spiritual health, that is, it is to bless, or say the good, to the mind and soul, it is to wish light and truth to one's neighbor. It's helping to clean up the world's wrongs. The world is better off because you are in it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, thank you, said with the intention that it contains, and that it has lost sight of in the world, is to distribute the good and the grace. They flow to where the respective cycle ends and reflow multiplied to where they left, that is, to you. Second way to pray without cessation. Every day you have things to do, homework to fulfill, some annoy you, are hard for you, others are mere routines, others you like, enjoy or interesting, such as sitting down to read the newspaper or attend a party, etc. Dedicate them. Both the pleasant and the unpleasant. Before you begin, say, I dedicate this to good, and if you forget to do it because you haven't done the habit yet, and you remember it when you've already started and you're halfway through, dedicate it anyway. You will be surprised to see how heavy chores become so light that you don't feel them. The expenses will be real charms for you, and the biggest thing is that all those people who are doing the same thing as you, in places other than you, and that you don't even know, benefit from the waves of kindness that you are sending them. You make the load light for them, you communicate your good humor, and this good blesses you. Third way to pray without cessation. At night when you go to sleep, let it be your last thought. I forgive everyone who needs my forgiveness, and myself. And although I know that on the spiritual plane there is nothing to forgive, I forgive because in this way I transform the idea of the one who believes that I am doing wrong. I invite my invisible guides to use my dream to help me do good where it is opportune. Thank you, Father. It would be very strange if you didn't fall asleep instantly. As the guides appreciate your willingness to help, they cover you with vibrations of peace and sweetness until you are fast asleep. The astral body leaves the material body when asleep, and sometimes travels long distances. The subconscious takes extreme care of it, and at the slightest danger, the slightest noise, it attracts it to its matter at great speed. Those dreams that you sometimes have that you are falling vertically always occur at the last moment before waking up, and are when the astral body is returning to its matter. It doesn't even take seconds. There is no need to be alarmed. Nor has the help you have offered and that the guides have taken advantage of has cost you anything. If you remember dreaming, and the dream is coordinated and very clear, you have to write it down when you wake up. Later the details will be forgotten and it is important not to lose them because most of the time they contain messages from the Master. Have you seen how we can pray without ceasing and without interrupting our daily lives? Have you seen how to take advantage of everything you've been wasting so far? Only then will you be able to afford not to attend the classes or conferences that are offered to you with so much love, for the Spirit of Truth will instruct you, and though I am not in the habit of suggesting anything that contains the remotest threat, it is my duty to remark that the phrase, many are called and few are chosen, refers to those who, having the great fortune to find themselves with the opportunity of learning the truth, to shorten the long journey of its evolution, and who, through carelessness, or because they prefer things of lesser value than spiritual advancement, despise this effort and do not return, are the so-called ones who have not been chosen. It is not out of favoritism that they have not been chosen, for in spirit all are heirs of the kingdom. It is because, as the parable of the sower says, the seed that falls upon the rock are those who, when they hear, receive the word with joy, but these have no roots, who for a time believe, and in time of temptation turn away. When the seed is allowed to go bad, many lifetimes pass before the opportunity presents itself again, and we close with the phrase of my Master, if you do not find time to dedicate to God, it is because all your time will be dedicated to problems and diseases. Regarding Spiritism. One of you asked me a question, why, if we were already spiritualists in past lives, if we were mediums, seers, clear hearings, if we projected and unfolded ourselves, why do we not retain the faculty or remember any of this in the present life? Answer: this is not always the case. Some people retain some of the psychic faculty, though not always in the same form as it manifested in a past life, since it too is evolving. For example, I know a person who is a contribution medium. This is one of the most advanced faculties of all psychic faculties. This means that she had faculties in a previous life, or in several, and in this one the faculty of contribution was developed. She doesn't remember any other, nor is she a seer or clear hearing. Now, we know who she was in her last incarnation and we also know that she was a great clairvoyant. Another reason why we don't remember is that either we misuse it and are punished in this incarnation, or we are erased so that we can evolve in other ways and not be distracted. The psychic faculties are a great temptation for those who have a different mission to fulfill. The astral plane is inherently very absorbing, in some cases very interesting, but in other cases torturous. People who begin to develop faculties sometimes go through terrible trials and experiences. The fourth dimension, for example, enlarges and sharpens. So if a person is developing clairvoyance, he sees gigantic shapes coming at him. In addition, the detractors, which is the name of the disembodied who have no other distraction than to tease the new mediums, love to frighten, and even frighten. They appear to them in frightful forms, they persecute and harass them, and so with their voices they despair with 1,000 tricks, threats, and torments. When a person has already surpassed the plane of the fourth dimension, his psychic faculties are erased so that he can evolve and advance on a higher plane. Metaphysics is a scientific study that needs peace and concentration. It is under the auspices of the green beam. That's why it's called the truth. If we were subjected to a constant torment of disembodied people who would not let us sleep with screams and barks in our ears, inside the pillow, if during the day they persecuted us with annoyances of all kinds, we would not be able to study or practice metaphysics. We would go crazy, or assuming that they would no longer bother us in that way, they would constantly interrupt us to ask for treatment, for help. It would not be possible for us to rise to a state of positive consciousness because they would keep our attention occupied in planes of negativity. This is why I tell you that if you are studying metaphysics in this life, it means that in past lives you have already overcome all materialistic sections. Don't think that what I just said is absurd. There are materialistic religions such as Catholicism, which is eminently material. She has not the slightest idea of the creative principles such as mentalism, correspondence, and cause and effect. The use of the creative words I am. When an individual thinks, feels, writes, or utters the words I am, he immediately awakens or alerts the attention of the vital energy in him and all that surrounds him. It seems as if the entire universe stops at this signal, to proceed to manifest, to give shape to what comes next. Why is this? Because the words I am are sacred. Because they are precisely that, the signal established from always to ever, to indicate to the vital energy that the time has come to create. To create something by the will of the Son of God who is each one of us. Life will obey you. He has always obeyed the command, mental or audible, which is preceded by the magic words I am. In metaphysics it is said that they are the name of God the Creator, and that is why we are made in the image and likeness of God, since that is what our higher self is called. He, our higher self, is the presence of God in the place where we are. And the one who is already aware of this, he who uses the I am knowingly is with God. This is why we say that one with God is the majority. I mean exactly that when a person already knows the power and value of this name, he never uses it to express a negative decree, a lie, but to do good, to transform an undesirable situation, to express the truth, and the truth is one of the aspects of God. Remember the Gospel of St. John, one of the greatest verses in the entire Bible, and the least understood. Now you're going to see it clearly. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Everything was made by Him, the Word, and without Him nothing has been made of what is made. Life was in Him, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The verb is to be, first person. I am. That word is what he calls the Creator Logos. He who uses it knowing the power it holds is with God. It is God when and where He uses Him. Nothing in the universe can refuse to fulfill the mandate. That's why the verse says, He is with God, He is God. When you get home, read the whole chapter so that you can enjoy understanding. There is no greater teacher than one's own experience. You all know that every time you do a treatment, every time they have achieved a true miracle, I have told them, don't mention the problem or the cured situation or disease again. All the beginners, when thanking them for the treatment, begin again to count and comment, because you can't imagine what it was like. And proceed to reconstruct the facts that we have just debunked. They enjoy rebuilding. This will explain to them the reason for relapses, both in problems and in diseases. You have to get out of the habit of going back to your old ways. They're going to tell me the same thing they've always said, but it's really hard to get rid of a habit. And what am I to blame for the fact that it's difficult? Of course it's difficult because it's just that, a habit, but you have to get rid of it. But to cut them off, I'm going to give them a lenitive. In addition, it's the way to keep the problem from getting worse, because if you remember correctly, Jesus told every sick person that He healed. Do not sin again, lest your later situation become worse than the former. When a magnificent result has been achieved with the help of one of the masters, or one of the disciples who is already conscious, it is because there has been a whole process very well constructed by the conscious person, since beginners are full of misconceptions, full of ignorance. When they half realize that their own words have destroyed what they had earned, they proceed to try to redo that wonderful treatment, and the prayer they utter is more or less as follows, O Father, don't let that wretched bandit do again what made me suffer so much, or like this, O Father, don't let the disease that kept me so many years like this and like this come back. Which is to resurrect the problem and add fuel to the fire by remembering resentments and grudges. The manifestation that this brings is much worse than it was before the first treatment. The remedy I give you is the following so that you do not fall into worse mistakes. When you see that the problem has returned after it has been resolved, or the disease after it has been cured or markedly improved, you know what happened. Then say the following prayer or affirmation, without repeating it because it is tremendously powerful. I am the resurrection and the life of the constructive decree I made regarding this situation. I forgive myself for this relapse. I am the law of forgiveness and the transmuting flame of all the mistakes committed by me and by all humanity. Thank you, Father, that you have heard me. And I can never repeat too much. Watch your words. Take heed to your decrees after pronouncing the holy and magical, most powerful I am. I am the resurrection and the life of all the glory and goodness that I knew with the Father before this world existed. I am perfect. This is the statement that expresses the most absolute loyalty to the Father, to our higher self, and to the Christ in us. I am perfect, or perfect. However, there are those among you who do not feel sincere in expressing yourselves in this way. I am going to explain to you that if you feel doubts, it is because you are contemplating the earthly consciousness, what we call the carnal consciousness, and what it is, it never wants to accept the spiritual. It's fair and natural. We have been given a carnal, earthly consciousness so that we can function in the material. If we did not have an intellect and an earthly consciousness, how could we manage on earth? We would be ghosts and not feel like we belonged on earth. Do you understand? Then, it happens that the earthly and carnal consciousness, is always seeing the horrors that humans do, the wars, the revenges, the robberies, the crimes, the deceptions, the hatred, the lack of love, the end, everything that we see daily everywhere, in the newspapers, on television, radio, etc. And she rightly thinks, and how are we to accept the saying that we are perfect? But we are infamous. Where's the perfect? And what I have just said, surely that you, especially beginners, find perfectly justified. Well, no, it's not justified. In spite of all that seems to justify it, you already know that to say it, or even to think it, is to be a categorically negative decree. You already know that the great truth is in the Spirit, and that the Spirit is perfect. You already know that if you declare the self-infamous, and through the word to be, I am, we are, you are lying, in addition to the fact that you are establishing a decree or law that is to be manifested to you in life. And here's the crux of the matter. If you, in declaring and decreeing that something is infamous and imperfect, know very well that it is going to manifest, then declare or decree the opposite, which is the truth, and you will also see it manifested. Above all, the repetition of it forms the momentum, or impetus that will give it more and more strength to manifest itself as quickly as possible. As they repeat it, as you remind yourself that the higher self is perfect and that this is the truth, you record it in the subconscious, create it in the conscious, affirm it with the superconscious, and the word becomes flesh, manifesting it in all the vehicles that are now believing the imperfect manifestation. To get you used to the affirmation, start by saying, I am potentially divine and perfect. Thus they are declaring the truth in every way, but the carnal ears that are believing the lie of imperfection are not offended. In addition, you earn 2 wonderful points with that statement. The first is that it raises our consciousness, which we insist that you do so much, and the second is that it gives such a pleasant euphoria and joy that it is recommended that you use the affirmation to cure yourself of bad mood and muria when it attacks you. Meditation. There are 4 steps in meditation. There are 4 galleries that follow one another when one meditates. The first is the image. We begin to meditate and have a picture of what we want to know, think, discover, etc. Let's say we're going to think about the Christ within. The idea we started with is called the image. It's blurry, mentally and emotionally speaking. 20 seconds after thinking about the image, a different, clearer, more satisfying idea comes to us. This is called the ideal. We already have a more lucid idea of our Christ within. It's not a figure, mind you. It's a feeling, an understanding. 20 seconds after we are meditating on this feeling, that is, as long as we are feeling that feeling, as long as we do not take our mind off it, it passes into consciousness, that is, we see and feel more clearly. We can almost explain ourselves in words. We could refer it to a third party. We would say something like this: I have entered a wider, more open, purer place, where there is nothing but love between beings. 20 seconds later we have a euphoria, a happiness, a great peace, satisfaction, consolation, contentment, and we are already smiling and with our faces illuminated. Any third person who sees us would tell us, that's the realization. The idea has become identified with our being. Emmett Fox says, "Don't analyze the love of God, feel it, and I don't want to have to analyze it to you, only that the explanation I have just given you was very useful to me and I want it to be useful and convenient for you as well." Now you know that you don't need more than 60 seconds to be in touch with God. 1 minute, no more, no less. If you have the interest and patience to keep your mind on one point for 20 seconds, you will feel the steps I have explained to you. You understand now why Dr. Emmett Fox says that you can get in touch with God even in the middle of Times Square, and that it is not essential to isolate yourself in any place or state of solitude, because if you get used to it, you will see that on the day you most need God you will find yourself in the midst of a tumult or an earthquake. All that is needed is to turn your thoughts towards God, and after 20 seconds you are already in the silence, that is, that mysterious state of which the mystics speak and ponder so much, for the silence is simply a state of peace, of love, of trust in God. A moment of intimacy with Him. The voice of your soul. There's an old adage that goes, God has a destiny for every being, and of course He has one for you. Master Fox says that the only problem we have is finding our right place in life. That when you find this, everything else happens automatically. That we are happy, healthy, because you're healthy when you're happy. That we will be prosperous and with all the necessary supply to cover all our needs, which implies that we will be completely free, because you cannot be free while you are poor. Poverty is at odds with freedom and vice versa. But even if you get all the distinction and all the money in the world, if you're not in your place, the one God made for you, you won't be happy. Universe is unified harmony. A divine plan. In a divine project there can be no superfluous piece, nor something unwanted. It can't be that God created a spiritual entity like you without a special purpose. This means that there is a special place for you, and since God is never repeated or has been repeated yet, your fingerprints prove it. It means that this place created especially and only for you cannot be occupied by anyone but you. No two people express themselves in the same way. That is why there can really be no such thing as a conflict of competences. There doesn't have to be 2,000 people fighting for the same place. That site is for only one of those people, and there are 1,999 other placements for the others. But how is it that we can know our own site? You may consider yourself to be no wonder, and doubt that God has any wonderful occupation for you. Your life is perhaps monotonous, unadventurous, and you may be thinking that it is very unlikely that it will suddenly be filled with beautiful, splendid things. And supposing that is the case, how can you go about figuring out how to do it? The answer is simple, like all of God. Since long before this moment, God has been whispering in your heart that wonderful thing He desires for you. That incredibly fitting and wonderful thing is called the desire of your soul. No more, no less. That secret that you keep in your heart, that which you dare not even mention for fear of being ridiculed, that desire that seems impossible to you to realize, that is the voice of your soul. It is the voice of God calling you to take the place He has reserved for you. Don't make excuses that your obligations make it impossible for you to do what you want, etc., etc., or that your family, or the conditions in which you were born. The truth, confess, is that you are frustrated, and frustration is the essence of negativity. If you are frustrated, you are not fulfilling the Father's will, therefore, at this moment you are engaged in things that are not to your liking or satisfaction, and you must be doing them badly, or less well than you could do them, since you are forcing yourself, and forcing yourself is distorting the soul. You are also depriving a large section of humanity of something that you alone can give them. By their fruits you will know them. If you are discontented, annoyed, without illusions, you are dissatisfied because you are not taking your place or doing what belongs to you. So discontent is useful, as it tells you to pray scientifically for your place to be presented to you. It's something you love to do. It's what you enjoy doing the most. Remember the following. When God calls you to His service, He pays all the expenses in whatever kind of currency, whatever you need to fulfill your mission, God provides. Money, opportunities, knowledge, training, freedom, strength, courage, everything, as long as you are willing to join your will to theirs. The voice of your soul is the voice of God, and that voice must be obeyed sooner or later. The portrait of today's earthly consciousness. Every family that is formed, every couple that marries and has children, is dedicated to accumulating a fortune. This fortune is achieved, if it is achieved at all, at the cost, not only of labor and sacrifice, but of efforts to earn it with all the modern tricks of liveliness, bird-turning, overcharging whenever he can. Whenever the partner or buyer, i.e., the payer of the moment is rich, it is not taken into consideration that the payer has an endless number of obligations proportionate to his means. He has money and he can pay, is the motto. At the same time, the payer knows that he is going to be overcharged and tries to get everything at half price, trying to squeeze the seller out of the moment, taking it for granted that he wants to take advantage of it. Whether this is the truth or not, it doesn't matter. You have to be careful, is another slogan. There they have the two slogans: he has money and he can pay, we have to take it from him, and you have to be careful, he wants to take it away from me. It is the awareness of theft that prevails everywhere. This consciousness, like thoughts, is transmitted, goes in and out of minds, and stays where they find affinities. They are greeted by the backward, the unevolved, and drive them to robbery, and crime. That is one of the reasons for the current thug. This constant tension of both sides makes it impossible to think of anything else. The tension is placed on the poor physical body that becomes sick with ulcers, because worry and calculation endure through the hours of eating, by cancer, because the poison of unpleasantness is absorbed by the body, and heart attacks, because the love of the heart is not used at all, which is the oil that softens everything, heals everything. On the contrary, the more intelligence and less feeling, the better it is for the business. I could go on enumerating the evils caused by these slogans, but I think these examples will suffice. These slogans and this awareness extend through all the activities of life. It's not just in the business of buying and selling. In a hospital, one patient is treated, another is operated on, with an eye on his pocket. The only love that is evident is that of the surgeon for the work of his hands. But it is not pure love as it would be for this doctor to stay out for his patients. Of course, there are always those who act with love, but the generality acts the best they can for vested interests. The surgeon operates as best he can by a combination of interest in the matter he is operating on, and interest in his prestige, and this is not a virtue, mind you. He doesn't care if he is branded a profiteering thief. The thing is that they say, what a surgeon, there is no other like it, so that this fame allows him to be able to charge whatever he wants without consideration. The love for their work is therefore bogged down by profit, and why all that profit, to buy farms, country houses, cars, trips, clothes, and furnishings that in turn increase prestige, to acquire pots, which become obligatory because everyone has them. The most expensive schools are paid for, and the boys are dressed in the most luxurious clothes that they want to acquire. This constant pugilism requires the mind to be occupied all day long in this whole material sequence. Not a moment's thought is given to the spiritual, to the conditions that are going to be found on the other side, as if this did not exist, nor did it even need to be considered. On the other side, what you find is the following. The physical body is a sponge that sucks out mental, emotional, and sensory excesses. We endure excessive emotionality because we have a body that absorbs. No one knows that this absorption turns into damage to organs and skin that become diseased. They are the constant ailments of all humans. After death there is no physical body to suck, and uncontrolled, ill-mannered emotionality runs wild. The being is more sensitized and feels everything deeply. Listen to everything those who are left here say about him. Because they do not know that the one who died is listening to them, they talk and unravel, exaggerate and slander as they please. The listener despairs because he cannot debate or refute. He cries out to reincarnate in order to get rid of the torture and obtain the oblivion that reincarnation gives, the unconsciousness of past evils. That's the hell I've just described. It is purgatory if the evils can be endured until they have come out and withdrawn. The day of death arrives and what matters is that the widow and children have been well anchored, proof of misery or straightness. The boys are considered to have been given a good education because they were taught to conduct themselves in life with the same set of tactics. If she is a woman, let her marry a boy of the same conditions. The way to rest the mind and the exhausted and depressed feelings by dint of the negative climate in which one circulates all day and every day, is by giving or attending a party to lift one's spirits by dint of sticks, that we call them. Instead of releasing karmas, which is what the earth has come to earth for. Many more accumulate, which clump on top of the previous ones already existing, forming hardened crusts that are called crystallizations. These, in order to be dissolved, require earthquakes, floods, cataclysms, and this is what the psychic mediums are seeing, for the collapses that are occurring on the plane of these crystallizations are due, first, to the violet light that is creeping into some minds, and second, to the increasing number of people who are students of metaphysics. They are denying defects and affirming virtues. This spreads analogous vibrations that act wherever they make contact with others like them. As above, so below, as below, so above. If large machines are essential here to break up rocks and hills by force of blows, the same thing happens with these crystallized constructions. They need blows to break them apart, first to break them, second to crush them, and third to clean and sweep away the dust. Now that on the spiritual plane there is one more condition that does not exist on the earthly. Every monstrosity manufactured by us, by our minds and our feelings, has life, thinks, hears, and speaks. What they think and say is always related to the material they were given at the time of their creation. If it was a creation of fury, hatred, and vengeance at the moment it is released into the air, at the moment when the crust that imprisons it in our subconscious is shattered, it goes into the air screaming everything that made it. She doesn't want to leave, that's her creator, and she fights to stay with him. Clear mediums hear them and believe that they are people who are persecuting them. They hear in words the thoughts they themselves had for others, and naturally, as everything is returned, they hear them crying out against themselves. This, let's call it persecution, lasts for a while the victim learns to reject it, to deny, to affirm, to meditate, to pray, to use the violet flame, etc. But if they are not metaphysicians, how do they learn it? At last they withdraw, ending up in other human cavities for whom these mental states are necessary in their evolution. It seems that this is a contradiction, but it is not. A very shy person lacks a reflex of decisiveness and strength. Reflection is the performance of those thoughts already formed and established in the subconscious. You already know that whenever a propitious opportunity is offered, the subconscious supplies the necessary reflex. If our thoughts have been good, correct, happy, a reflection of well-being is produced and a happy situation is manifested. If they have been negative, the opposite occurs. Now, by the law of action and reaction, excessive timidity attracts its opposite, reaction opens the field for the opposite force to enter and lodge. In this case, it is a benefit that the creation of violence, which has been released by someone who no longer needs it, is going to lodge in the mind of the excessively timid, because the combination produces a middle ground. Each condition acts on the other and produces the reflex that the shy person was missing. People who are not clearly aware do not hear their creations crying out against them, but instead they do feel a horrible discomfort of guilt, of terror, which they do not know how to explain, and since they do not know how to defend themselves from what they neither see nor hear, they suffer a lot. They attribute to them all kinds of reasons that are not accurate. They punish and blame themselves, they talk a lot about their depressive states, and this makes them worse. This is why it is said that initiates suffer greatly. But Providence takes care of them, and they find those who teach them these things, they find teachers and their Christ. They are initiated, and they already know the way and the way to act. I am now teaching you so that when you are confronted with these old states of consciousness of yourself, you will know what to expect and you will know how to catalog them, above all, that you will know how to transmute them, dissolve them with the lights, which you will learn in the next book entitled, The Wonderful Number 7. It can't be your duty. That if you are trying to live the spiritual life you have the right to peace of soul and harmonious progress. If these things are failing you, ask divine wisdom to show you the reason for the failure. It is your duty to devote reasonable time to daily prayer in the form of a meditation, or a spiritual reading, or a review of your favorite affirmations, and to live the rest of your life according to the divine will as far as you can at this time. If you are really fulfilling this duty sincerely, you cannot do more, and you do not have to worry or reproach yourself, or have a sense of guilt for the fact that you are not achieving what is not possible for you at this present moment. Instead, it cannot be your duty to do something that is beyond your strength or reach at the time. God is your Father, and a loving Father never demands the impossible of a child who behaves well to him. It can't be your duty to do what you don't have time to do. God is the infinite wisdom, which on earth is manifested by common sense, and it is not common sense to expect more duties to be fulfilled than can be done in a 24-hour day. It can't be your duty to do what you don't have of money you don't have. If you are facing such a situation, it is because something is very wrong in your thoughts. The first thing that is evident is that you believe that God is a gigantic ogre who threw you into the world with your hands tied so that you would fail once and for all. Remember Psalm 46, which begins, God is our refuge, our strength, and our ready help in tribulations. Then, he finishes, be quiet and remember that I am God. But this you must believe, affirm it by believing what you affirm, and not simply parrot it, for it is your faith that moves the mountains. It cannot be your duty to do something that sacrifices your own integrity or your spiritual progress. No one in the world can force you to lie, for example, and the appearance that there is no work, or that there is no service, or that money is very difficult to earn, or that it is giving a lot of heart attack and cancer, etc., etc., etc. is false, lie. Prove it for yourself by affirming and believing the opposite. Do not sacrifice your spiritual progress or your own integrity by believing that circumstances make you say otherwise. It cannot be your duty to do today what really belongs to tomorrow. On the spiritual plane, which is the truth, there is no time. There is no past and no future. Everything happens in the present, and if you think and say, believing what you say, that today everything is resolved, today all needs are covered, today you have all the strength, all the peace and all the help you need, and that tomorrow will be another today, you will realize that truth, as well as understand that our fears are always for a troublesome tomorrow. They are never for today. The Bible says, today is the day of salvation. Today is the accepted day. Because God lives in an eternal present, is never in a hurry, and is always in a smiling rest. It cannot be your duty to fulfill a remote duty by sacrificing a close duty. The Sermon on the Mount says to first remove the trash from your eye, and then the beam from your neighbor's, because if you don't clean your sight first you won't be able to see to help your neighbor. It cannot be your duty to be in a hurry, or sad, or discouraged, or angry, or resentful, or antagonistic, under any circumstances. The Bible says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. This means that in order to be successful, to be able to work, to obtain our achievements, to be happy, for our well-being and our advancement, we have to be positive, and positive means happy, because the Christ within us can do nothing for us as long as we are negative. He rejoices in our joy, and walks away by allowing us to be defeatist. A continuation of this book in the metaphysical series Within Everyone's Reach is The Wonderful Number 7 by Conny Mendez.